We constantly hear about what an absolutely vital ally Israel is to the United States, even though so many pieces of evidence negate that claim, beginning with the fact that Israel constantly, and many times over the last year, engages in exactly the behavior that the United States tells Israel will harm and undermine American interest. And even though it's the United States that gives Israel all the money it wants and needs to fight these wars and the bombs it uses to destroy the cities of its enemies, Israel has made no secret of the fact that it doesn't care in the slightest what the United States wants, will continue to do whatever it decides it wants to do, even when the United States is saying that it will harm its interests. That's very odd behavior from someone we're told, from a country we're told is such an important ally. What kind of ally just disregards what you say is in your own interest and continues to do the things that you say are undermining your own national security? Another odd aspect of our great ally Israel is that on many occasions, they kill American citizens, not just in Gaza, but in the West Bank and other places. And they kill journalists and activists and other Americans, often without any cause at all. And as of today, they even now arrest American journalists, one of whom, Jeremy Loffredo, has been on our show before, is become well known for doing courageous independent reporting. He often goes to the West Bank and interviews settlers. He was on our show after he did some amazing work showing that that Israeli settlers in the West Bank were deliberately blocking the ability of trucks to carry humanitarian aid into Gaza. He interviewed them. He showed why it is that they thought that what they were doing was just, how many children were at those blockages, in order to show how Israelis are teaching their children that it's somehow noble to prevent food from entering Gaza. And that very same journalist who has done such important and courageous work, such singular work, in showing a lot of the barbarism and cruelty of Israelis in general and settlers in particular, now finds himself in an American prison cell based on blatantly frivolous charges for doing nothing more than reporting. Here is Ynet News, an Israeli news outlet that is right-wing, pro-government, pro-war. Even their own explanation for why Jeremy Loffredo was arrested and now charged and sitting in an Israeli prison makes clear how farcical these charges are. Quote, American journalists disclosed secrets during the Iran attack, police say. Quote, Jeremy Loffredo, who, let me remind you one more time, is an American citizen, faces Israeli court after reporting on Israeli missile strikes on several Israeli bases. U.S. fears possible diplomatic incident following the reporter's actions. Quote, Jeremy Loffredo, 28, an independent American journalist, was arrested by police on suspicion of endangering national security after reporting on where missiles landed in the attack launched by Iran earlier this month in the IDF's Nevatim air base and an intelligence base in central Israel. In his report, Loffredo said that attacks on Gaza were launched from the Nevatim base and said that the government's private jet used by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was located there. The charges against him include aiding the enemy during wartime and providing information to the enemy. Quote, he published the information openly and fully without attempting to hide anything. If this information constitutes aiding the enemy, many other journalists in Israel, including Israeli reporters, should also be arrested, said attorney Leah Smell, who is representing him in this defense. Quote, a spy would not have acted so publicly and transparently. Now, let's just summarize what that means. As you undoubtedly recall, last week, Iran launched a barrage of ballistic missiles, 200 of them, all aimed at military sites, in contrast to what the Israelis do, which is flatten apartment buildings in civilian areas or flatten and bomb schools and refugee camps and hospitals. The Iranian missiles were aimed at Israeli military and intelligence facilities, including the headquarters of Mossad. And the Israelis, in conjunction with the Western media, tried to lie and say that none of those missiles, or very few of them, actually landed, and none of them did any damage because their vaunted Iron Dome system intercepted most of them, even though we all watched the video showing how many of those Iranian missiles were landing and exploding. And in order to debunk this lie, these claims, Jeremy did exactly what a journalist should do, which is he went to these military bases and was able to show here are gigantic craters in the airstrips used by the Israeli Air Force Base. Here is damage done by Iranian ballistic missiles in places like intelligence facilities, including one near Netanyahu's own plane. Now, obviously, the Iranians know which of their missiles landed and what damage it did. Anyone can see that by satellite. So the idea that somehow he endangered Israeli national security by reporting on the places that Iranian missiles landed and showing the damage that they done is laughable on its face for so many reasons, including the fact that there were other Israeli journalists, as his lawyer pointed out, who reported the same information, and yet for some reason were not among those arrested. Just to give you a sense for what the report was that he published shortly before being arrested, let me show you what it is that he published. He published it at the Gray Zone, which is a news outlet obviously very critical of Israel. It has all kinds of vocal critics of Israel there, like Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate and Kit Klittenberg and many others. The Israeli intelligence agencies and Israel itself obviously hate the Gray Zone, hate their reporting, hate their viewpoint. And Jeremy Loffredo has been doing much of his work with the Gray Zone, and here is the report. It's about 5.5 minutes long, so I'm just going to show you some of it, of what he reported that led to his arrest and these very serious charges. And you judge for yourself whether or not this kind of journalism ought to be criminalized.
I'm Jeremy Loffredo for the Gray Zone in Israel, where last night Iran fired over 200 ballistic missiles in retaliation for the assassinations of Lebanese and Iranian political and military leadership. Since the missile strikes, Israeli authorities have attempted to downplay the significance of the attacks, censor the locations of missile impacts from media publication, and claim that Iran was targeting Israeli civilians. What I saw today, here in Israel, is clear evidence that Iran was targeting the same Israeli intelligence and military infrastructure that's been used over the past year to carry out brutal assassinations and attacks.
The morning after the missile strikes, news reports indicated that one of the principal targets was Nevatim Air Base. Nevatim Air Base, located deep in the Negev Desert, is the largest and most critical Air Force base in Israel. It's home to 3 squadrons of U.S.-supplied Lockheed Martin F-35 stealth fighter jets, which have played a pivotal role in Israel's year-long air assault on the besieged Gaza Strip. And as of 2 weeks ago, these F-35s are also spearheading relentless and devastating strikes in southern Lebanon, so far resulting in the deaths of 2,000 civilians. The base is also home to Wings of Zion, the Israeli equivalent of Air Force One. Video footage taken around 8 p.m. Israel time by Israelis and Palestinian Bedouins who live around the Negev Desert show Nevatim Air Base being hit with at least 10 ballistic missiles.
يا أولاد مطربت يمرأ يا رب يا الله
I drove 70 miles south to the highly sensitive Air Force installation, aiming to document the underreported and potentially embarrassing destruction. As I approached the military base, F-35 fighter jets were vertically landing at the base, in all likelihood on their way back from killing, 30 miles away in Gaza or 100 miles away in Lebanon. The road was separated from the base by more than a mile of desert and miles of steel fencing, so seeing any destruction was impossible. In the Negev Desert, there are 46 Palestinian Bedouin villages. 80% of these villages are, quote, unrecognized by Israel and face constant demolition orders on any permanent or semi-permanent structure, resulting in most of their homes and buildings being built with light material like plywood or sheet metal. I went village to village asking about the missile strikes. Most Bedouins were suspicious of me, but 2 young men who told me the explosions scared their wives and children claimed they knew where a missile had fallen. They led me there, but they were unwilling to appear on camera due to concerns for their safety.
All right, so that's the gist of it. And I just want to note, first of all, the journalistic courage it requires to just get in your car and drive 70 miles into Israel when you're already known as a highly critical journalist of the Israeli government, often debunking its lies and showing it in a negative light. And none of this information is secret, nor does it jeopardize Israel in any way. It just debunks the lies that the Israeli government told, which, if there's any function of journalism, in my view, it is showing that governments lie about matters of great public relevance. And that's exactly what he did. It didn't jeopardize the national security of Israel, it embarrassed the Israelis by showing what everyone with their own eyes saw on those videos, which is that Iranian missiles were landing and exploding in Israeli military targets. And for that, he was arrested. He didn't get a hold of and then disclose troop movements of where Israelis were attacking in Lebanon. He didn't reveal future target information of Israeli soldiers that would endanger them or anything like that. All he did was report on the fact that Iranian missiles landed and did damage to the exact Israeli air bases that are used to air bomb Gaza and Lebanon, which is exactly why the Iranians targeted them. That is journalism, pure and simple. Now, when I say simple, I don't mean it's common. It takes a lot of courage to do what he did, as evidenced by the fact that he's now sitting in a jail cell for having done it. And so often, the most important journalism, the most courageous journalism, the journalism that actually bothers people in power, which is the role of a journalist, does result in them retaliating against you, which is exactly what happened here. But the odd part, or the part that should be odd, is that the Israelis are acting against an American citizen, an American journalist whose government is providing Israel all the money, arms, and weapons it needs to carry out these wars. And there should be an uprising in the United States among journalists, American media outlets, the American government, over the fact that Israel has now imprisoned an American journalist simply for doing reporting. Now, just to give you a sense of the sorts of things that Loffredo has been doing over the last year, including some of the work that caused him to have us invite him on his show, where he goes and interviews Israeli settlers in the West Bank, just to give you a sense for who these settlers are and how they think. Let me show you one of his reports that he did from March of this year. Friends, it's Wednesday. Here we are to block the aid trucks of Nazi Hamas and their helpers. So this was showing when the UN, the US were demanding that more humanitarian aid be let in, especially food and medicine to Gaza, because they were starving to death on purpose by the Israeli blockade. And these Israeli settlers, by all accounts, under international law, illegally occupying the West Bank, went and had protests to stand in front of these trucks and preventing them from entering Gaza. And he went to interview them about not only what they were doing, about why they were doing it. And here's one of the settlers, the Israeli settlers, who talked to him and said, as you can see, our people are blocking the primary crossing. We are also blocking the secondary crossing on this side. We can see here from the trucks of food for the Hamas Nazis and their helpers. All of these trucks for miles for the Nazis inside. All aid for Hamas and their friends in these trucks. Come and block it, come. What are we trying to do, said another one, to block the aid trucks from crossing into Egypt. And from Egypt it will go to the people of Gaza, and to Hamas it will help Hamas. It's very successful. Look, the aid trucks were supposed to be entering Gaza from 10 in the morning today, and we are blocking them from entering. It's been days since any aid trucks have passed through, so there you have it, it works. I think what we need, I don't know, we need to be united and kill all of them. We all need to go back in Gaza and control all of it. Make it part of our country. This is a young Israeli. We're often told that the Palestinians teach their children to hate the Jews, to hate Israel, to want to be violent. A lot of these people took their kids, their young children, and told them that they were purposely blocking food from getting to the people of Gaza because the people of Gaza are basically Nazis and subhumans and don't deserve any food. So it's a very important piece of reporting. It's just giving voice to Israeli settlers about what they're doing and what they really think. Now, this is not the first time, to put that mildly, that the Israeli military has acted against American citizens, including American journalists. And when I say acted against, I mean not just arrest them, but kill them. Here from CBS News in May of 2022, and you'd be forgiven if you forgot about this or never heard about it, since almost no American journalist or government official raised a peep about it. There's the title: Palestinian-American Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh was killed covering Israeli Defense Force raid in West Bank. Quote, a journalist for Al Jazeera, an American journalist, was shot and killed while covering an Israeli raid in the occupied West Bank town of Jenin earlier Wednesday. And by occupied, they mean occupied by the Israeli military. The broadcaster and a reporter who was wounded in the incident blamed Israeli officials, while Israel said there was evidence the two were hit by Palestinian gunfire. So Israel lied and tried to claim that they were killed by Palestinian gunfire, not their own. Shireen Abu Akleh, a well-known Palestinian female reporter for the broadcaster's Arabic language channel, was shot and died soon afterwards. Israeli officials said there was video of Palestinian gunmen boasting that they had killed a soldier, but that no Israelis were wounded in the incident, indicating they shot a journalist. That was the Israelis' original defense. Oh, we didn't do it. Those dirty Palestinians killed this American journalist. You'll be shocked to know, I'm sure, that turned out to be a total lie from CNN in May 2022. Quote, they were shooting directly at the journalist. New evidence suggests Shireen Abu Akleh was killed in a targeted attack by Israeli forces. Quote, several shots rang out in quick succession, cutting through a clear blue spring morning in Jenin in the West Bank. Crack, 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 crack. The cameraman filming the scene scrambles backwards to take cover behind a low concrete wall. Then a man cries out in Arabic, injured, Shireen, Shireen, oh man, Shireen, ambulance. When the camera operator pans around the corner, Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh can be seen lying motionless, face down on the ground, as another Palestinian reporter crouches down beside her using a tree trunk for cover. She then reaches out and tries to rouse her as gunshots continue. There's no response. Both women are wearing helmets and blue protective vests marked press. In the moments that follow, a man in a white t-shirt makes several attempts to move Abu Akleh, but is forced back repeatedly by gunfire. So he tried to save her by getting her to help, and then he was shot at too. Finally, after a few long minutes, he manages to drag her body from the street. The shaky video filmed by Al Jazeera cameraman Maji Banura captures the scene where Abu Akleh, a 51-year-old Palestinian American, was killed by a bullet to the head at around 6:30 a.m. on May 11th. She had been standing with a group of journalists near the entrance of the Jenin refugee camp when they had come to cover an Israeli raid. While the footage does not show Abu Akleh being shot, eyewitnesses told CNN that they believe Israeli forces on the same street fired deliberately on the reporters in a targeted attack. All the journalists were wearing protective blue vests that identified them as members of the media. And ultimately, more investigations were done that documented that the IDF shot her. The IDF ultimately admitted shooting her, but tried to claim it was accidental. So you see the trajectory of lies told by the IDF. And if you can find any hint of or evidence in mainstream media circles or governmental circles in the United States about the IDF purposely shooting an American journalist in the head while she was doing her job, please show it to me, because I saw almost none of it, including from the people who love to proclaim themselves America First patriots, but who suddenly decide that when a foreign country called Israel murders or arrests American journalists, that doesn't bother them at all, because they value Israel and love Israel and are more loyal to Israel than they are to their own fellow citizens, which is the case with Jeremy Loffredo as well. These things are common from AP in September of 2024, meaning last month. Quote, an American activist was killed by Israeli fire and is buried in Turkey as Israel strikes Gaza. Quote, a Turkish-American activist who was killed by Israeli fire in the West Bank was laid to rest on Saturday in her hometown in Turkey, with thousands lining the streets and anti-Israel feelings in the country rising from a conflict that threatens to spread across the region. Ansar Egi, a 26-year-old woman from Seattle, she was raised in the United States, born and raised in the United States, was shot dead September 6 by an Israeli soldier during a demonstration against Israeli West Bank settlements, according to an Israeli protester who witnessed the shooting. The Israeli minister said Tuesday that she was likely shot, quote, indirectly and unintentionally by Israeli forces. If you don't remember any American government or American journalist protest over the shooting of this American citizen who was peacefully demonstrating against the Israelis, you'd be forgiven, because there was none. PBS News, January 2024, family and classmates mourn the loss of a New Orleans area teen killed in the West Bank. Also something that resulted in almost no notice or protest in the United States, because Israel killing Americans is viewed as something that, like everything Israel does, is justified, including by people who love to portray themselves as placing America first. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.